What's happening, Oliver? Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, you too, man. Honestly, I've fuck. I remember watching you on Six Over. So
Oh, Jesus
it's
Christ.
kind of fucking crazy for me.
Seems like a million years ago, that whole thing, man. It's like I see some of those clips pop up on YouTube or somebody
Yeah,
posts them somewhere, and it's like, wow, it's yeah, pretty wild. Time flies.
yeah, man. How long ago was that now?
Oh God, somebody posted that uh it's over 10 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it has
So
to be.
I'm trying to remember. I was in Culver City at the time. It was like Born Free 3, I think. So yeah, it's over
Yeah,
10 years. Yeah, something like 2011, 2010, somewhere around there.
crazy.
Somebody will correct you or me or whatever, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's all a blur at this point.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
So that's what you're working on at the moment, isn't it?
This is one I basically it's sort of done. I mean,
Yeah,
I was just tuning it and doing some shit to it. It's a 54 panhead,
beautiful.
uh little side. Well, it's not a side project, but I have like a couple of projects I've been working on getting done.
Okay,
Uh,
cool.
this is for a guy down in San Diego, and yeah, it's got some super cool parts on it. It's
Fucking
original.
beautiful.
It's original tanks, original paint, original emblems, original
Fuck.
yeah, original dash,
Yeah.
original
But
front end.
you matched the paint on the fender, didn't you? Is that right?
Yeah, that was kind
That's
of an interesting
sick.
thing. Yeah, so that was kind of, I sure as hell wouldn't call myself a painter, but you know how it is with this stuff is like it's all about okay, do I pay somebody a shit ton of money to do it
Yeah.
and then get annoyed, or do I invest the money in some more tools? And
Yeah, man. Yeah, totally.
that's kind of like everything I've done. But I painted quite a few bikes over the years, but
Yeah.
I'm not a painter, so to speak. But although I'm doing more and more of it. But anyway, um, yeah, I wanted to give it a go because I've never really done any paint matching or distressing stuff like that,
Yeah.
which is like a big kind of a little bit of a trendy thing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's appropriate because I'm trying to match the tanks, right? And the tank's got this weird like oxidation in it,
Yeah, man.
all kinds of really cool stuff. So I
Yeah.
tried to do that in the fender. I got the paint pretty close, the
Yeah,
color.
definitely. Well, definitely from this end, it definitely seems like I've been following you doing it, and it's
Oh,
yeah, man, it's fucking awesome, and I love that. Like you say, it's like a bit of a trend now with the distressing thing, but people always
yeah.
take it like they make it look like it's been in the barn for like 50 years. Like I think it's
It,
great how you've just matched it, just
oh,
right,
thanks,
man.
man.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to look like it sort of belonged, and it
yeah,
seemed appropriate. It seemed like the first, instead of stripping like this beautiful original paint and
yeah.
fucking it all up, um, it was either leave the fender black or try to match it. So I thought it would work pretty well. And
Fucking right.
yeah, I learned. I mean, like anything, I'm very much about learning by doing, and so through the process, I definitely learned a couple of things. Some things I probably would do slightly different, but I'm pretty happy with it, and the owner's stoked. So yeah, it's all
Sick.
good. It's all
Did you
gravy.
did you get it done in one take, or did you have to start over?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I kind of did. I mean, I took my time. Like, um, I got all of I did epoxy primer and all that stuff on it, and I did all that, and then I worked with this hot rod guy, a paint guy in Oxnard, who's kind of known in the area. Oxnard is a little town north of me.
Cool.
He's known in the area for like matching paint, old paint. And
Awesome.
this is a Harley Davidson red, and you can't find the numbers anywhere, um, like the actual paint code
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
Now there might be somebody that has it that I can tell them to fuck off because I'll.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, but yeah, it was kind of an interesting process. I don't know if you've seen it. The guy pulls out this little fucking laser machine or
Yeah.
something, and it basically takes a photograph or a digital photograph of some sort, and it's kind of gathering all the basic information of what that paint color is.
Yeah.
And it's not a perfect science because obviously that's got oxidation and fading and all that stuff, but I wanted to try to get close. And
Yeah, man.
it was a little bit of a crapshoot because I got the paint back. I'm like, okay, it looks, you know, okay.
Yeah.
And you don't really know until you spray the base. And even then you don't really know because you got to get the
Yeah.
clear and other stuff. So
Yeah.
uh, I was hoping it was close enough that it would sit into the bike. I wasn't too worried about it being perfect. I mean, it's still a chopper, and I'm not, it's not a show bike and
Yeah.
anything like that, or a competition bike.
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, that was an interesting process. And once I sprayed the base coat, I sprayed probably, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 good coats
Yeah.
because I knew I was going to sand the shit out of it and kind of get a little bit of distressing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give myself some room, so because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to fuck it up and go back and paint it again.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it was a good learning process, and I'm pretty stoked with it.
Yeah, man. No, it's definitely fucking worked. Looks fantastic.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, and the bike is I don't know, you talk to guys, I mean, you're doing your own sort of building and stuff,
Yeah.
and it's a love-hate thing. There's that really exciting part of finding the parts and collecting the parts and kind of having a vision in your head and imagining yourself, riding the
Yeah. Yeah.
motherfucker or whatever. And then you struggle through the, things not fitting or getting the
Yeah.
wrong part or whatever the case may be. And you kind of hate it and then you love it and then you hate it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's like a
um,
relationship.
you
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And sometimes and these projects have been ongoing for me for a while.
Yeah.
But, and when you start seeing it all come together and you're getting a little bit more excited and then you fire it up for the first time, that's exciting. You're like, oh
Yeah.
man, and then you ride it and you're like, oh man. And then of course that's a nerve-wracking process. Anybody that, will tell you with the old bikes, shaking it down and all of that. And that takes some time. So I was talking to a friend of mine and about, the process. And he says, yeah, man, one of the hardest parts, and a lot of people aren't really that good at it, is wrapping up a bike or really finishing a
Yeah.
bike,
Totally.
of like riding it, getting stuff dialed in, getting it tuned, making, all of that, and to where it starts settling in,
Yeah.
like an old shoe,
Yeah,
uh,
man.
that is hard because that's tedious and tedious. You
Yeah.
ride it, some shit comes loose, you fix that. You ride it, there's a little leak, you fix that. So
Yeah.
anyway,
No, no, I totally get what you're saying, and you hear about it a lot. I mean, I've
yeah,
I've been a victim actually of it myself, where they've finished the bike, they've taken it for a shakedown, but
yeah,
that's it, and then you get the bike back, and then you've got that whole process that you just fucking explained then,
yeah.
and then people are complaining, and they're like, oh fuck, he doesn't know what he's doing, when he's probably a
You
great
know,
builder, but that last bit is just so difficult.
it's hard. And
Yeah,
then, the other part of that is, man, I've had a couple of bikes where I built for people and I broke them in and the whole thing, and they get
yeah,
on them and shit happens and it's like a disaster.
yeah,
Not a disaster where somebody gets hurt, but it's like, hey man, what the fuck,
yeah,
I think everybody's experienced that. And part of that is it's an old bike. These things are
totally.
70, 80 years old,
Yeah.
and you have to have some mechanical inclination,
Mm.
to be able to work on them and manage them and stuff like that. And when you build something for somebody and you deliver it, you go through every sort of nook and cranny as you can. And you say, hey, listen, this is what you should expect in the first
Yeah.
1,000 miles,
Yeah.
or get a manual, do that kind
Yeah. Which they never do.
No, a lot of them don't, but I've
Yeah.
been lucky,
Yeah.
but the other part of the building bikes for people is like you never really are done with it,
Of course.
you know,
Yeah.
because it's kind of got your signature on it, and that person that you built the bike for, um, at some level, they're always going to kind of reach out to somewhere at some point, which is
Yeah.
good and bad. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so
Uh,
how are you enjoying this process with doing the podcast, man?
yeah, I'm loving it. Like
Mhm.
I mean, for me, I just get to speak like it's like speaking to you, and and I just get to speak to people that I've followed for a long time, and I get to like pick your brains and then like make that connection. And then when I have, problems in the future with my bike, I can hit you up.
Of
totally,
course, yeah.
totally selfish. Yeah,
It's all good, man. Of course, yeah.
yeah, I'm really enjoying it, man. I'm loving it. I had, I started it, took a little break, um, because I mean, you probably experienced it yourself with you've built some amazing bikes, but there's always
Oh,
like
thank you.
some crazy savages that'll just come out online and just like rip something to pieces, even though it's good. You know what I mean? So,
Oh, you mean about the criticism or
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that?
like little
Yeah.
haters or whatever they call them.
Yeah, we could have a whole other podcast about that in and of
Totally.
itself.
Yeah,
There's so many variables, and
yeah,
it's kind of the nature of the internet.
exactly. Yeah,
We're all at some point, if you're putting yourself out there, especially when it comes to the internet, whatever it is you're doing, um, even if your intentions are, hey, this is me, this is who I
yeah,
am, and all this other stuff, and you're being as authentic as you possibly can be, it doesn't matter. I mean, you
nah,
have the people that are just going to hate for whatever reasons they're going to hate or criticize, and then you have people that are just doing it just to be, have
yeah,
the effect of irritating or whatever. I think nowadays there's so much of that going on that a lot of us, I think, have kind of gotten, for lack of a better word, matured
totally.
about
Yeah,
the use of the medium.
yeah, yeah,
Um, there definitely was a period of time, early days of Instagram, where, like, if you look at like Born Free and some of that stuff,
mm,
and sort of the evolution, I like to call it the Renaissance, the chopper Renaissance.
yeah,
Um, the evolution of that. I think a lot of people, including myself, really didn't know how to really use it. You know what I mean? It's sort of like
yeah,
it's kind of this culture shock where everybody's online and everybody's talking at each other, and there's anonymous things and the people are criticizing, and you're like, why are they criticizing? What's the problem? I
yeah,
know that guy. And then you
yeah,
call the guy and then he's not, it's just really, I think it
totally.
creates really strange dynamic, and it's an experiment. And I think
Yeah,
we're learning from it. I definitely have learned a lot
yeah,
from using the medium. I will say that the evolution of all of that, where you have, back in the day, uh, the internet days, let's say the early days, there was only a handful of like message boards. There wasn't no
yeah,
blog, there was no nothing, social media, was no Facebook, nothing. Um, and so there was a handful of message boards, like there was the horse message board, horseback street choppers, and then there was a message board called fuck choppers and punk rock, which was largely run by Chopper Dave and some other guys from the
yeah,
centers and that kind of thing. And that was a very small group of people.
yeah,
Uh, and then there was blogs, which was great. I loved the blog time. It was really neat. I met so many people. People were sending me stuff, and it was really cool. Such a really, like, refreshing time. And then, of course, Instagram came, and then I think that was like, what the hell is going on?
yeah,
But I think there's an evolution of that, and I think we've matured a little bit around that. But I will say, um, I like, if we're doing internet, we're doing tech. The
yeah,
podcast medium, I think, is great because um, you're not in the same room, but there's a tangible, tactile kind of feedback loop
totally.
that's, is not misinterpreted, and then you can see
Yeah,
the people that are talking. You can see their mannerisms. You can see their, read their body language, and all of those things that come with being, it communicating, being
yeah,
able to
totally.
communicate effectively. So yeah, I dig it. I've done a couple few podcasts in different mediums and stuff like that. So yeah, I appreciate having a conversation with people for sure.
Totally. It's just one of them things that seems to be, well, it was, but like dying, like just having conversations. It got
I
to a
agree.
point where it's all messages and it's all text and
Agreed.
yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
like you were saying about the forum, no, not forums. Fuck, why have I gone
blogs.
blank? Blogs, fucking hell. So blogs were great because like people would come to your blog because they wanted to see your shit. So I
Right.
think like with this stuff, people can stumble on it, and I think that's when the random, fucking
Yeah.
word shit will just come out. They'll leave some,
Yeah.
whatever comment on it, or
Yeah,
yeah,
the other thing I think I like about having interviews and I love listening to I love listening to podcasts and stuff, but I also love watching interviews with people.
yeah,
This is a podcast, but really what you're doing is an interview. I mean,
yeah,
you're you
totally,
know, it's an interview medium, which is great. And um I loved I don't really do it much anymore because I don't subscribe, but I used to love watching Howard Stern. I don't know if you know
yeah,
Howard Stern.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. I used to love watching his interviews with people because like he's an amazing interviewer, you know.
yeah,
Um, and I've really come to appreciate a lot of people that I may not have been fans of or been aware of uh, their work or whatever the case may be, and be
yeah,
like, okay, you know what? I had I had an idea about this person. I don't really have that idea anymore. That, my idea was wrong.
yeah, totally,
Really appreciate this guy. I mean,
yeah.
um, so yeah, I dig it for sure. I'm kind of a nerd. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to a
Yeah,
lot of stuff, and I love listening to intense discourse about all kinds of variety of subjects.
yeah,
Like I'll watch these couple 3 hour long conversations between physicists,
yeah,
and scholars and stuff
yeah,
like that, and maybe even on subjects I don't know anything about, but just being able to listen to them and you know have an interesting conversation and
yeah,
learn.
totally.
So I love that.
Yeah, it's definitely I think it's a craft,
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, 100%. Being able to well, it's a craft being able to interview people, uh but it also takes it takes a certain person that's comfortable in their own skin and their own knowledge or expertise to be able to express ideas and be able
yeah,
to communicate concepts and be comfortable and be able to talk to people face to face, so to speak.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I get that a lot
yeah,
of people. People will say, "How the fuck do you talk to people for like 2 hours?" I'm like, I
I
don't
love
know.
it.
It's pretty easy. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Well, yeah, I mean, like going back to the idea of us being locked into our devices and kind
Yeah.
of losing that ability. I had this conversation a lot. My straight gig is, I'm a professor uh, at Cal State, and so
Oh
I talked
wow,
to,
that's cool.
yeah, a lot of people may not know that, but
Mm.
I talk to my students a lot about that. That the
Mm.
soft skills of like get off of your phone. Like when
Yeah,
you're standing outside class or coming into campus, instead of being having your face buried in your phone, go introduce yourself to somebody. Or if you're waiting in line at the coffee shop, instead of having your face in your phone, you
yeah,
know, um, you never know. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know what
yeah,
interactions you might have and that kind of thing. And you get in these little habits um, that you can get into that can help facilitate some of that because uh, we're so indoctrinated, for lack of a better word, with our devices. For example, if you go to the store or coffee shop or bike shop or wherever you're going and you're going to be there for a period of time, um, a habit I do is I leave my phone in the car or I leave my phone,
yeah.
in my backpack on the bike or something like that. You know what I mean?
Because it's so
Uh,
easy to just pull that thing out, and then
yeah.
yeah, totally.
People get bored and
Yeah,
or they get bored and they want to fill that vacuum with
yeah,
something. And the first thing they get is their phone. It takes some practice to get away from that. So
yeah. It's something that I'm actively trying to instill that in my kids,
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's funny because
Yeah,
like
how many kids you got?
three,
What's their ages?
5, 10, and 13.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. But
You're covering the spectrum right there, man. Because
yeah, I know. Yeah,
the whole deal. Yeah,
no more. But
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's funny. Like a lot of the the older generation, they'll speak to my kids and they're like, "Oh wow, oh your kids can actually have a conversation. Holy holy shit!" Like and it's
They look
I
at
just
you and
think it's important. I think we take it for granted, but a lot of people can't do it today. They
No,
struggle.
it's
They anxiety. They struggle. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I deal with college students a lot, so I see a lot of that. But the other part of it is, uh, it's not. I mean, it's there, but it's not. At least in my experience with a lot of my students, it's not as pervasive
Yeah.
as I think some people think, because there are a lot of kids of a certain age and that are disengaged. Not, I wouldn't say fully disengaged from social media or their devices, but they're kind of moving in that direction. So
Yeah.
there's hope.
Yeah. Totally. No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But
Totally.
I don't know if you know, but speaking of this subject, I think it's a good segue. I mean, years and years ago, um, and the beginning of really at the early stages of Instagram and how social media was really kind of exploded, especially
Yeah.
on the whole motorcycle scene. And something that was a novelty of seeing an old bike go down the road or a picture of an old bike going down the road, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden became commonplace. You're
Yeah. Of
looking at it
course.
all the time.
Yeah.
And so it took some of that mysticism out of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The mystery. It took a little mystery out of it. And people were doing rides and everything was on the platform.
Yeah.
And I love seeing it, but it was, to me, it was a little bit of a catch 22. I'm like, I kind of don't want to see it. I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
know that those guys that are on that ride are on that ride, and
Yeah.
they're present,
Yeah.
in
Totally.
that moment, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And again, I'm a little bit of a geek, and I read a lot about memory and how we process memory and all these kinds of things. And I made a joke with some friends. I said, I'm going to start a ride and I'm going to call it the analog ride, and be no cell phones and no social media. And all these guys said, dude, that's a fucking great idea. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so we did it. And this is a long time ago, but
Yeah.
and and I remember the first year we did it, I was a little nervous because, you know, I didn't know if people were going to really be able to kind of leave their cell
Hold up
phone off
to it. Yeah.
for a weekend. It was like off for the weekend.
Yeah.
Uh, but everybody did, and it was fucking awesome. And we were like, nobody was on their phone. Nobody was looking at maps on their phone. Nobody was calling. Nobody was taking pictures with their phone. We were at the campsite. Nobody was on their phone at the campsite. It was
Yeah,
fucking
man.
beautiful. It was great. And, um, I wasn't making a statement.
Yeah.
I was just sort of like, hey, let's really disconnect
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
moment. Um, and then I was also interested in that idea of how we process memory, because we have a memory, and then we have a memory that includes our device, and there's some, I won't get
Yeah.
into it, but there's
Yeah.
an interesting way in how that kind of affects how we recall memories.
Right. Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, we did that for a few years, and um, um, I got some slack for it from some guys. They
Yeah.
thought I was bagging on people, which I wasn't.
Yeah.
But it's all gravy. And but the last time we did it was just before the pandemic. Um, so we're hoping to bring it back. But I
Awesome.
nowadays most of that stuff I keep super low key, and I'll share
Yeah.
periodically, but I
Yeah.
try to hold that stuff close.
I can't even remember a time when we were on a fucking camp or whatever and people didn't have their phones out.
Yeah,
Jesus. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. I kind of like, again, I'm not like, militant about it,
Mhm.
but it's nice. I have a kid. I
Yeah.
have an 11-year-old, and so I have my device in the case there's an emergency I need to know. But man,
Yeah.
I really when I'm out on rides, I go with my friends or whatever places, and we have a good group that we do some really nice rides and stuff. I consciously just try to avoid my phone,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I'm not always successful, but I try to think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or not think about it.
It's difficult, man. It's definitely it's kind of I definitely put it up there with an addiction. Because
Oh, 100%.
I'll be
Yeah.
on my phone and I'll be like, "What? Fuck! You just
Yeah.
had it. Fucking put
Yeah.
that thing away." Like, stop
100%.
being a fucking weirdo. Yeah,
Yeah. 100%. So what's it like out there where you're at? And I mean, I know I got a lot of friends in, over there in that part of the country, and I got a bike that's coming back. We can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, yeah. Is it
Uh,
the Uncle Sam, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Uh,
how is it around there with you, with the group of guys riding and bikes and old bikes, and what's it like for
yeah,
you?
I mean, old bikes, there's not too much of a scene. Like we're spread out across the UK, you know?
Mhm.
Um, like, there's I don't want to say how many because someone will fucking correct me, but there's a small portion of us throughout the entire UK that are into this thing,
Right,
actively building bikes, getting out riding, but we're really spread out.
right.
Um, in American terms, we're not that spread out, you
Mhm.
know. But um, but I mean, where I live, the riding is amazing. Like
I
you go
bet.
through all like the Lake District and the fells. What do you call them? Like mountains.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man, it's fucking spectacular. And then I live just on the Scottish border, so 10 minutes you're in Scotland, and some of those roads are fucking
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about about that part of the world where
Yeah,
in a couple hours or less you can be
yeah.
in a different country in a different environment.
History everywhere.
Fortunate enough, I've been to London a few times, and I was in
Yeah,
France for a little bit, and uh, spent some time in Rome. I
awesome.
loved Rome, man. I was
Yeah,
like, maybe I was just mesmerized with the food and the art and
yeah,
stuff like that. I don't know the period of time I was there, but I literally wanted to stay. I was like,
yeah,
I'm not back. I
yeah,
love, but yeah, the US, United States, it, it's huge. It's a big, big place.
yeah,
And even where I live in Southern California, I'm in Ventura County, which is about an hour north of LA, and it's a big area.
yeah,
Uh, oh, I lived in the west side of LA. I mean, even going from one side of LA, like west to east, is huge.
yeah, man.
And I would always tell people, I said, just for the hell of it, one day get on your bike or your car, whatever, and just start in Santa Monica, wherever you're at, or Playa del Rey or whatever, and just kind of stay on the surface streets and just drive all the way across LA. It'll
Yeah,
take you all day, and you will see different cultures, different worlds. I mean, it's the diversity and the mix of people and experiences is vast. It's
yeah,
it's literally LA is like you know being in Europe,
yeah, yeah,
going from
yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah,
um and yeah, so it's pretty neat. And then the US, and I recommend to people too, is if you ever have opportunity, you know whether it's on a bike, obviously I would choose a bike. I've done it a
yeah,
few times. Ride cross country, man.
yeah,
It's one of the should be on the bucket list of things you do in your lifetime. But it's a pretty amazing experience.
yeah.
But
I'm planning it for next year. I've got two big rides for next year. I've got England to Africa, and I want to do
wow,
coast to coast
nice.
as well.
Yeah, I did
Just,
one of the first times I ever did cross country. It was on this little bike I built, and it was early days. I mean, I was wet behind the ears.
yeah,
And I'm just like, I'm gonna get a bike and I'm gonna ride across country. But you know, like anything, it's like that experience really. You can't recreate those kind of first time experiences, right?
yeah,
Whether they're good or bad. It's just sort of like you just throw caution in the wind and go.
yeah, yeah,
Learn along the way. And I had this uh, stroker shovel with a Sportster tank, ran out of gas a bunch of times and stuff like that. Um, no cell phones, all that
yeah, man.
stuff.
Yeah,
But and I've when I lived in the Bay Area for a little while, and I used to ride from the Bay Area um, to Vegas all the time, and we rode to New York one year, from New York to North Carolina. So I've been really lucky to do some like pretty serious miles on
yeah.
old choppers, and it's a pretty amazing experience.
How
And
far is that from the Bay to New York?
oh shit, is it? Oh man, I have to look. You'd have to look on a map.
Thousands. Isn't it?
Yeah, I
Thousands.
think it's a couple thousand miles. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
um, at least. Um, yeah, we did this ride some years ago from New York to North Carolina. Or I'm sorry, I rode with a group of friends to Sturgis, which is a kind of a common
yeah.
thing people do every year. And but from here to Sturgis, I want to say it's like 1,400 miles around.
Wow.
I think so. I don't know. Long story short, it
Yeah,
was I rode. I have this group of guys I ride with pretty regularly. It's just great dudes, and a group of them pretty much have been riding to Sturgis every year for
yeah,
I don't know, probably 20 something years, you know. And I rode Uncle Sam with them one year, and they were all on new bikes, except for one other guy. One other guy was on like a 75 shovel or something like, but everybody was on new bikes, and I was on my Uncle Sam 66 chopper. And we first day we ride, Vegas was hot as fuck. And then these guys are all kind of late risers, man. They get up, they go out and party and stuff, and they get up at
yeah,
like 10 in the morning, and I'm just chomping at the bit, ready to hit the road. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
let's go. And we're not on the road till like almost midday. And I'm like, fuck, man, let's go.
Gross.
So the second day we're in outside of Salt Lake City, I think it was. And that night I told one of the guys, I said, listen, man, I'm going to wake up early in the morning and I'm just going to blow
Yeah,
down the road. He goes, oh yeah, we'll catch up with you. I said, okay, no problem. And so I wake up about 6, I get on the bike and I head out from Salt Lake City on Uncle Sam. This is
yeah,
like Uncle Sam wasn't even painted. It was like primer and a bare metal frame and stuff. And I got all my
yeah.
camping gear and shit on the bike. And I get right outside of Casper, going into Casper, Wyoming. There's this long stretch of road, and guys that ride this area know what I'm talking about. And I don't remember the road. It's like 150 or 135, something like that. But it's this 2-lane road that just seems like it goes on forever.
Yeah.
And there's like nobody out there. And I'm riding along and it's fucking great. Weather's great. A little hot, but it's fucking nice, and I'm putting at 60, maybe 80, 60, doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've been on the bike for a while, and I hadn't seen a car like at least in an hour. There was like nothing. I hadn't seen a car, nothing. And then so I'm looking off in the distance and a little bit of heat distortion on the road.
Yeah.
And I see this little figure on the road, on the other side of the road, sort of coming towards me. And because of the heat distortion, it looks like this figure is like floating up off the ground.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was,
yeah, totally.
and I'm like, well, that's pretty trippy. And I hadn't been drinking or doing anything,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was stone cold sober. And I riding the bike, and as I get closer, I see this guy, and I go, what the fuck is this guy doing? And he's out there all by himself. And as I get closer, I start slowing down. Like I slowed down to like maybe 20 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and I wanted to stop. It was a fucking dude all by himself on a unicycle, on a fucking unicycle.
Holy shit.
He had a backpack on, a big sort of desert hat, you
Wow.
know, fanny pack and water bottles. And he was on a unicycle, riding that unicycle, beep, 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 like that.
That's
And I just like,
crazy.
yeah. And I'm like, I'm looking at the guy like, I'm like,
Is this real?
right. I'm like, I'm fucking dreaming because I've been on the bike for a while. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? The guy looked at me and he waved and just fucking kept going. And I thought about that for hours. I'm like, I wanted to turn around and talk to the guy, but I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no, I'm just gonna go.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
uh, and
Wow.
I'll finish the story in a minute, but that part of it in a minute. And then I get to Casper. This is how weird this trip was. I get to Casper, Wyoming, and I'm gonna spend the night in Casper and then go into Sturgis the next day. And I get to Casper. I got all my camping gear and shit. And but the guys that were behind me, coming up behind me, they were going to get hotels and stuff. So there's no hotels available. Casper, Wyoming is a small town in the middle of nowhere. And
Right.
so there's not much there. And so there's nothing available. I'm like, what the hell? That's so unusual. Like, why are there like nothing available? And the guy, I went to like a 7-Eleven or something. The guy at the 7-Eleven said, "Oh, they're doing a casting call for what's that show? The singing show, America, not America's Got Talent, like
Like American Idol or something?
that's it,
Yeah.
American Idol. They're
Yeah.
like doing a casting call for American Idol in Casper, Wyoming. So everything's booked.
Fuck.
So this is weird, man. So I call my buddies. I say, "Hey, man, there's nothing here." And I said, "I'm just going to keep going, and then I'll
Yeah.
stop off the road. Long story short, I went all the way into Sturgis. I got into Sturgis at midnight. I rode 750 miles in a single day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was
Fuck.
great. I loved it. I was like
Yeah.
seeing shadows in the night, and I was tripping by
Yeah.
the time
Yeah.
I got there, but it was. So anyway, the unicycle thing. So I'm like, that thing was just racking my brain. What the fuck? So I'm there for the whole trip in South Dakota. I finally get home and I just do a little Google search or whatever. And it turns out there's this whole crew of people that do these cross country trips on unicycles, on fucking unicycles. So I'm thinking, that's hardcore.
Yeah,
I'm
totally. We're worried
700
about
miles.
gas.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going, 750 miles on a chopper. I feel like I'm a badass. Nah, not really.
That guy's
I'm not
worried
riding.
about death.
Yeah, I'm not riding a fucking unicycle across country.
Yeah,
So yeah,
shit.
true story. Yeah, it's trippy, trippy.
That's hilarious. Fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I can't even ride a
yeah,
unicycle. So.
I don't even know where to go with that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah,
fucking dangerous. Like heat stroke,
yeah.
all the fuck, like
But I was just
Jesus.
thinking about that guy. He by himself. Everything he had was on him. He didn't have a
Yeah,
trailer or he did nothing. He was just, it was on him.
that's fucking crazy.
And I'm thinking, how long did it take him to get down that road, or even cross country? I don't know, but yeah, true story.
Fuck. That'd take months. A
Yeah.
month, months, surely.
Yeah. Well,
Fuck.
people walk cross. I mean, like,
Yeah,
people have done all kinds of really interesting things about walking and
yeah,
stuff like that. So it makes sense riding a unicycle.
yeah, totally. Fuck.
Somebody's going to do it. I'm sure if somebody hasn't done it already, somebody's going to do it on a scooter.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tell us about Uncle Sam, man. I love that bike.
Thank you. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. I'll give you the whole story. Yeah, I built, here's the funny thing. Um, when I built that bike, not many people, at least in the sort of, chopper renaissance, not many people were building longer or long bikes. I mean, the common reoccurring theme was, the 60s chopper with the Springer, wassail tank, and upsweep pipes and a spring seat, and baits and all that stuff. And every time I've always been this way since I was a kid. If there's a fad, I usually run the opposite direction. Or
Yeah,
if there's like, even if I look like a dick or a dork, I'm gonna
yeah,
run the opposite direction. It's just sort of
yeah,
like innate in me
yeah,
for whatever reason. Um, so at that particular time, not a lot of people were building long bikes, and Uncle Sam's not a really long bike, but it's a longer bike, um, or a proper chopper. And I said, you know what, I'm going to build a freaking chopper. And I had this frame that was bent, and I said, perfect frame, like to do it. Um, I found this old Denver Springer front end that was super long, but it was stupid long. I traded that, and then I found this um, old original extended Springer, um, that was done back in the day by Buchanan's. I don't know if you're familiar with Buchanan's
yeah, yeah.
spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, for a period of time in the 70s, they were extending Springers and doing stuff like that.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that. And so this was a Springer that was extended by them. And so I got it for a good price, and I narrowed it. And anyway, so I built the bike, and then I rode it for a while, uh, just raw metal and stuff like that. And I was doing the Born Free show again. I remember this is like Born Free 6 or something like that.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
It was like the fourth or fifth time I was doing it. I can't remember. And then I went. A buddy of mine had this original. Ironically, it's on this bike.
All right, cool.
This original Imperial Primary that I was going to use to build this panhead I was building for Born Free. And I went to Hollywood to pick it up, and it was a somewhat rainy day. And I usually don't like riding into Hollywood
Hmm.
across LA. It's fucking craziness.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, but I said, you know what? I'm going to blow in there and blow out. I can split lanes and do the whole thing. When there, I got the thing on the back of my bike. I'm going down Western, and I'm going down Hollywood Boulevard actually, and making a left on Western, and I'm literally standing still. Like my foot is my left foot's on the clutch, my right foot's down, and I'm literally looking down uh, the road. Traffic is backed up. Traffic is stopped on the other side of the intersection. It's like completely clear. I look, okay. I start to roll. I didn't even take my foot off the ground. I rolled forward about a half, freaking, 5 or 6 inches.
yeah, yeah.
And out of nowhere, whack, this car hit the front end of my bike, spun
Shit.
me around, did a pirouette. I remember like spinning around, and
Fuck.
I could immediately feel my leg was broken. My left leg felt like it was broken. My right leg I knew was broken. I'm like, oh shit, and yeah, and then it's fucking crazy, and
Yeah.
luckily
And that in Hollywood, that happened?
it was in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived
Fuck's
in
sake.
Culver City, which was on the other side of town, but
Yeah.
yeah, and so that was a trip deal, and I recovered, and thankfully, and even
How
when I
long did
was
that take?
I don't know, 6 8 months, something like that, but
Fuck, man.
and I was building a bike for Born Free at the time too, and I finished the bike, which was stupid. I had a new kid. Oh, dude, it's fuck. I think about this shit, going, what the fuck was I doing?
Yeah.
What was I thinking? How the
Yeah.
fuck did I do that? Like I think about now, like between having a kid and jobs and time and all that stuff, going, what, man, how the fuck did I even get that done? How did I do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just stupid. I work at night, and it's stupid. So I finished the bike and all that shit. And then the next year around, they asked me to do it again, Born Free again. And at that time, I was never ever a show bike builder ever.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was kind of anti-show, to be honest with you. Like my brothers and the kind of stock I come from is like about riding. It was all about riding. Let's ride. I don't give a shit about.
Yeah.
We would go to shows, but we generally were not there to see the show bikes. We were there to
Yeah.
see we were always, we go look at bikes and go, oh, that bike gets ridden. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I come from. So, so the timing of all that stuff and doing the Born Free shows is fantastic. It was a great experience. Nothing but, positive
Yeah.
experiences for me and stuff like that. And some negative, but doesn't really matter, but
Yeah.
so the last year I did, they asked me to do it again, and I had started to feel like, because the show was growing so big,
Yeah.
money was getting involved, sponsorships and that kind of thing. It's becoming a big business, which, hey, no
Yeah. It's
problem with
huge
that
now, isn't
either.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's and that's cool. And I felt like, what, um, I wanted to make kind of a statement.
Yeah.
And the statement was, at least for me, was that I wanted to kind of express this idea of what it really is kind of like building an old bike, an old chopper, and
Yeah.
sort of the overall experience, not really the bike by itself, and then maybe creating some history with the bike. And I wasn't trying to show people up. I wasn't trying to compete. I wasn't trying to make a better bike. I was trying to uh, parlay, if you will,
Yeah.
this experience,
Yeah.
of building the bike. And then so I said, I'm going to rebuild Uncle Sam. It was wrecked. And then I was going to do it a little different. I was going to recruit some guys I respected and knew to help me to do things
Cool.
on the bike. To kind of show that experience of bonding and sharing, you know, uh, craft and experience and knowledge and just more about the bonding in the community of
Yeah.
kind of getting to know people, which is for me has always been a big part of it, or with my brothers and all the way to now. So anyway, so I got uh, Brandon Casquillo used to have a place called Mullins Chain Drive. He helped me bend the frame back, and he had a frame jig, and incredibly talented fabricator and machinist and stuff. Spent a few days with him doing that, videoed it, right? I did all the videos and was
Yeah.
all that shit. And then Cole Foster, which is, if you know, I don't know if you know Cole Foster at all. Cole Foster is a legend in the hot rod world and motorcycle world. I definitely encourage
Cool.
you
Yeah.
to take a look at him. He's just a super incredibly talented metal guy,
Yeah.
auto guy, and period. But anything, he can do anything.
Yeah.
And he helped me along with this guy named Aaron uh, rebuild the tank. We built the tank from scratch and all this stuff. And so I videoed that. That was a great experience. And had a guy that I helped build a bike for some years before. Helped me do the body work on the frame. He had a body shop now, and so there was community in that, kind of bonding
Cool.
in that. So that was kind of the whole thing. So I documented all of that, putting the bike all together, and then hopefully to kind of have a bigger meaning behind the experience of building an old motorcycle
Yeah.
and then riding it.
Yeah.
And then
Sick.
instead of finding history, at least this is my romantic idea, instead of
Yeah.
finding history in a barn, we're going to make some history. And
Yeah.
so I
Cool.
felt like made a little history with Brandon and Cole and in the bike, and then hoping that the bike would stay together over a period of time, maybe when I'm long gone and
Yeah,
dead and
man.
that kind of shit.
Yeah.
um so that was kind of the idea. I think there was a lot of people that really appreciated it and talked to me
Yeah.
about it and said, yeah, I totally dig it. And some other people, you got the haters, whatever.
Yeah.
And um so anyway, long story short, I was moving, and I was going through a really tight, tough time in my life, and I was moving shop and moving house, and I had a bunch of these bike builds I was doing, and I kind of told all these people, I said, listen, man, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
I got to dig myself out of a hole here. You can either come get your shit
Yeah.
or wait,
Yeah.
and most everyone was like super cool. They're like,
Awesome.
dude, do what you need to do, take
Sick.
care of it. We're here, no problem, blah, blah, blah. And one of the guys I was building a bike for out in the UK, I called him and told him, and he was like, yeah, no problem. Cool, man. Do whatever you need to do. But then I mentioned him. I said, listen, uh, it would help me if instead of me waiting for me to build you a bike like Uncle Sam,
Yeah.
that you take Uncle Sam, right?
Fuck.
He's already paid me for a build,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Money's already spent. And he's like, well, that's a fucking bike I wanted anyway.
Yeah.
I said,
Who's
they
that?
only Renshaw,
Right.
Wilcox.
Right. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
And so he's a brother. We've known him for years and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was going to somebody I knew and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Uh, I said, the caveat is I'm going to paint it black. And he
Yeah.
goes, yeah, I want a coffin tank and all that shit, and I'll keep the tank. I said,
Right.
okay,
Okay.
cool. So
Cool.
we made that deal. Like, I'm not one to really collect things and fall in love with things. I'm not
Okay.
one of those, I'm not like emotionally attached
Yeah.
that way, especially with motorcycles. Uh, but that was one bike that was, when it left in the back of that truck, I was crying.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah, man.
crying.
Well, I mean, you fucking hand drew the fucking
Yeah.
Uncle
I still
Sam
got
on. Yeah,
I still
yeah.
got the yeah, I still got the tank
That
over
makes
there.
sense that it was painted, and that's why I did not know it was here. Because I feel
Yeah.
like if fucking Uncle Sam was here the way it originally was, yeah.
Well, it
Because
gets
you put it up saying that it was coming back from the UK, and I was like, how the fuck have
yeah,
I
I'm gonna
not seen that?
take the tank down and show you if you want to see
Yeah,
it.
man. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Hang on, let me think. It's like dusty. Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. And did you draw? Is that pencil?
Yeah, I did. So here's funny. It's colored pencil.
Shit.
So that's the other thing is like when I decided to do the artwork, like I have some experience with airbrush. I used to do airbrush a million years ago when I was
Yeah.
a young kid, and but I hadn't really kept up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it was a little bit of an excuse. So like I knew I could break out the airbrush and maybe do it, but I knew for sure I could do it with pencils, right?
Yeah,
With
yeah,
colored
yeah,
pencils. So it was a little bit of like, okay, I'm gonna do it with colored pencil because it's a dumb idea and nobody would do it with colored
yeah, yeah. Like that's yeah, I agree. Like
and
because
then
I know you've said it on one of the videos, but but I know because I'm a tattooer and I fucking draw, and there's only
yeah,
so much pencil you can get on
that's exactly right.
especially a piece of metal. You know?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this buddy of mine, he doesn't paint stuff anymore, but he worked with me on doing the paint. And I told him the idea. He goes, "Oh, that's a cool idea, but how the fuck are you going to do that?"
Yeah.
And so we painted it white and then sanded it with like 400 grit, so it had some teeth on it, you know.
Yeah.
And then just like your tattooer, right? You lay your stencil down and do all that
Yep.
stuff that way. And so I had to come up with ways to blend it. I don't know if you've ever worked with colored pencil at all,
Yeah.
but
I
you know,
can't imagine how you would do that on metal.
well, I find
Yeah.
out like I could use alcohol, a little bit of rubbing alcohol, right?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Paintbrush and blend it a little bit, which worked
Yeah.
really well. But yeah, there's a certain point where it just you can't put more on there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, and the other part was, you know, if it was really going to hold up over time, and then how we could clear it because we didn't know whether the clear was going to like fuck up the artwork,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. That.
because it's wax basically, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we did some tests on a panel and we
Yeah.
painted, we did it with a really good art clear first, and then we did the epoxy clear after,
Right.
and it held up pretty good. Um, it's faded quite a bit, but it actually kind of looks cool faded.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And and then one of the things I did, later on, I airbrushed a little bit of a shadow in there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Cool.
After I did it, I
Oh
go,
yeah.
I fucked it up, but
No, that's cool. Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
fucking
there it
love
is.
that thing.
The cool thing about this
Crazy.
tank, this is the other part of the history part of it, is the tank that I had on there when I got in the crash was this. It was a Wassel tank.
Hmm.
I had narrowed it and I'd stretched it out 2 inches.
Yeah.
So I cut a Wassel, added 2 inch panel in the middle and stretched it out and narrowed it. So this is based off a narrowed, extended Wassel tank. And
Yeah.
so when I crashed it, it was all dented in and fucked up.
Yeah.
And then Cole Foster and his partner Aaron Elliott, when I went up to Salinas Boys a couple of days, we made patterns and then we made it all from scratch.
Yeah.
So this is a tank that was, you know, handmade with Cole Foster's.
Oh, that's crazy. And so, like, was it just made with like a bag and a hammer? Was
Yeah,
it all,
pretty much
yeah, yeah,
bag hammer primarily, shrinking and stretching.
yeah. English
Do
wheel and stuff.
English wheel, a little bit of an English wheel, and a planishing hammer. Yeah,
Wow.
and what was interesting about this was, um, we ended up doing like this is a big panel,
Yeah.
this is a big panel, and then these were two panels here,
Ah,
and then a
right.
big
Okay.
panel here instead of one big panel here,
Right.
which was different, you know. And then later on, I put this in and all that shit. So
Yeah.
here's a funny thing too. This is just a old aluminum
Oh,
gas
shit.
cap,
Yeah.
but the top of it is a brass cover off of like a nautical compass.
That's cool. I
You know,
love those little details that you put on your bikes. You've done
little.
something else. I
I
forget.
like I like the found object stuff. You know, as long
Yeah.
as
Is
it's
that
not
like a
too
piece of
overdone.
walnut? Why have I got
Yeah,
walnut? Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I can show you that. Yeah, real quick.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I still have that. That was on that black panhead I built with the big wheel.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'll grab it. Yeah, that black panhead that I built for, well, I built that bike for myself, and that was Born Free 3. That was the first year that Born Free had the builder invite thing.
Right. Okay, cool.
And I was building that bike for myself.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the first quote unquote show bike
Yeah.
I built, like, or my version of a show bike.
Yeah.
And they called and said, "Hey man, you want to bring the bike to the show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And then so that's where that was. And then I built what, and then later on I sold the bike, but I kept the shifter and the
Yeah. Cool.
knob. I made this knob out of walnut, and then I put in a there's a knob. I made it out of
Yeah.
walnut, and I glazed in an old picture of my dad
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
from night. It's like a little brooch thing with a picture of my dad on it
It's cool as fuck,
from
man.
like 19. It's like 19, probably 1950 something. Picture of my
That's
dad. Yeah,
beautiful, man. That's
yeah, pretty
crazy.
cool. I
Yeah.
still have that, which I'm gonna put it on a bike eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was cool. So that was like shit, man, 7, 8 years ago, maybe,
Yeah.
which is hard to believe. And so I told him, I said, well, man, if you ever decide to sell it, make sure, you give me first dibs on it. He's like, of
Yeah.
course. So sure enough, about a month ago, he emails me and says, hey, man, I need to make some moves. I got to sell the bike. I'm getting some other stuff going on. He goes, do you want it? And I'm like, oh, fuck.
It's always at the
Like,
wrong time.
well, like, I'm fortunate enough I got a little bit of cash, but
Yeah.
it's not cash I want to justify on
Yeah,
another
totally.
motorcycle, but
Yeah.
it's that motorcycle. So I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
I said, well, don't do anything. Let me see what I can do. And so this crew of guys that I spent a lot of time with riding, I said, listen, the bike is up for sale. If anybody's interested, let me know. And one of the guys lives not far from me. Said, I'll buy it. I want it.
Sick.
So yeah, it's coming back. And he's like, oh, he's so cool. He's like, just consider it. It's in storage. I'm not going to sell it. And so
Sick.
whenever you want the bike, you can buy the bike back.
What a legend.
Yeah, fucking
Yeah.
A. I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
fucking A. And I'm just happy. I may not be able to, I'm not counting on anything. I may not be able to get the bike back, and I'm not really that worried about it. But the
Yeah.
fact that one of my close friends has it and he's going to enjoy it and I get to see it, maybe even ride
That
it.
makes it all right.
Oh, dude, and so that's kind of like the full circle for me, is like there's a history sort of being created.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was what I sort of tried to do and started with anyway. The bike is still together. Uh, the other caveat was my buddy buying. He goes, "Hey man, the only caveat I have is I want the original tank."
Yeah. I
I
knew that
said,
was coming.
"Yeah." So I said, "No problem. Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem."
sick.
So, yeah, it's pretty stoked on that. One of the best. I've been lucky enough. I've had quite a few bikes, and one of the fucking best bike I ever had, hands down,
Yeah, man.
hands down.
How
Yeah.
many miles do you think you put on that thing?
Oh shit, I don't know, man. Well, let's see. I bought it. Oh man, 2005, 2006, maybe. Uh, it wasn't like that when I bought it. I bought the motor and the frame and some other stuff. I bought it in Venice when I lived in Venice Beach, and I bought it at this. I used to walk to this coffee shop, and around the corner was a auto repair place, old school auto repair place. And I was walking by one day and I saw the bike back in the corner, like in this random place. I go, that's a generator.
Yeah.
And I ran up there and I'm like, hey, dude, what's the story on that bike? Oh, yeah, it's my boss's. Like, he lives in Thailand. And I go, cool. What is he going to do with it? He goes, oh, just hold on, hold on, hold on. The guy's like yelling at me, hold on, hold on. I go, okay. So he goes in the back room and he gets the guy on the phone and he comes back and says, yeah, he'll sell it to you. because it's too much money to bring it into Thailand of like the
Yeah.
tax or whatever it was. And there was a guy at that particular time in Venice in that area. There was a guy that had a shop called Garage Company. This guy named Yoshi, Japanese guy, and he was like the guy that would find all the shit and buy
Yeah.
it before anybody else could buy it.
Yeah.
Like
I
he
know
was
that.
at the
Yeah.
swap
Yeah.
meet before anybody, like walking through every truck, and he had the wad of cash, and he was just buying all the good shit.
I hate them guys.
Nobody, yeah, nobody could beat that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we would always joke like, "Oh, Yoshi got it. Yoshi got it."
Yeah.
The first thing I thought was like, "I got to buy this thing before Yoshi comes and buy this fucking bike."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And I remember, so I bought it, and I remember seeing Yoshi, and he goes, and I mentioned it to him. He goes, "Oh, you got that bike." So he already knew about it. You're a fucking guy, you know. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had it since then, and I rebuilt the motor probably 2 or 3 times. So I had a lot of miles on it. I rode the
Yeah.
shit out of that bike,
Yeah. Sick.
Yeah.
What about that? I do want to go in a bit. I want to go back to the very beginning, but
Sure.
just whilst we're talking about the bikes, what about that Yang Yang?
Yeah, that was
That
another one.
was
Yeah, that was another
crazy.
one. Yeah, thanks, man. That was another one that was kind of like, again, at the time, it was around the board. It's this kind of the thing. Again, it's so weird. I think about it now. It's like I'm not a show bike builder, but the early days of Born Free, I got involved, and it was a really prolific, really exciting time. It was all fresh and new, and real good group of solid people. And they asked me to do another bike, and again, I'm that kind of person when if I'm standing in a sea of, red motorcycles, I'm going to build a green one, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Uh, so at the first, and second or whatever, Born Free, again, everybody, that was the thing. And it's such a cool style, and people still love the style. I don't have a problem with it. The Wassel tank and the upsweep pipes
Yep.
and the spring seat and the 18-inch wheel and the skinny and all that shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Fuck that. And everybody's building knuckles and pans and generators, right? And nobody at that time, nobody gave a shit about, at least in the show
Yeah.
arena, about like nose cones or even Evos, I said, I'm going to build a fucking nose cone, and I'm going to build it like with no kicker, and it's going to have a starter, and it's going to have shocks, it's going to have disc brakes,
It's gonna have
and
an
then,
air filter that I spend hours and hours and hours on.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I'm going to go completely the other direction. And it's something at that time, something I wouldn't have done, it's totally out of the box for me too.
Yeah.
Um, so that was actually built from my personal bike.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and then I remember getting that bike done and looking at it and go, what the fuck? And it was so strange for me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't
Yeah.
know how people were going to respond to it, because it was, at the time, it was so different
Yeah.
than sort of the theme and the style of what everybody was doing. And then you go to Born Free, and it fucking wins Born Free. I'm like, whoa, like that's crazy,
Get it though, man.
Yeah. But then a buddy of mine bought it in Hawaii, and then he had it, and it sat in my kitchen for years. And then later on, a guy over there in UK bought it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's over there somewhere.
Is that when didn't you put it on eBay just as an
I
open
did.
auction? Yeah, I remember seeing that.
I
Yeah.
was like, I put it out there, and I had it up on an auction, and I was kind of feeling everything out. And this is, I want to say it was like, was it around the pandemic? I can't remember, but I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it was the time where
Yeah.
people, like, prices were dying, and people
Yep.
were not really spending any money.
Yep.
And this cat jumped up and goes, "Hey, I want the bike." And it again went to a good home, and he's a guy that has a number of pretty cool bikes from builders and stuff. So
How many hours did you spend on that cover?
I don't know. Yeah, it
I
was.
remember you saying it. I remember you gave it a name, didn't
Yeah,
you?
I called it the world's most expensive air cleaner
That was
cover.
it. Yeah, sorry, that was
It was
it.
just
Yeah.
like this
Yeah.
little piece of sheet metal.
Yeah.
took me forever, you know,
Yeah.
body work and you paint it and all this fucking shit, you know, and then I machined this little thing, stupid, you know, but, but it's all a learning experience, you know,
Yeah,
like
totally.
that's the kind of interesting thing about, uh, you know, building something and then some years later looking at it and, you know, I would do this different or do that different, or I've learned this, I've gotten better at this or whatever. Um, yeah, it's a great experience, you know.
Yeah, man.
I think if I did the air cleaner again, it wouldn't cost me near as
Yeah.
much. Yeah. So
Well, take us back to the beginning, man. I really want to tell everyone how did you first get into bikes? How did it all begin?
yeah, well, I mean, really, my brothers, when I was really young, I grew up in an area in Miami, Florida, Westwood Lake, which was suburb of Miami, you know, middle class or lower middle class area. And my older brothers, um, Buck and Chuck, for real,
Sick.
nicknames, but that's their names, Buck and Chuck.
Yeah.
Uh, when I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old, they were of age, you know, and they
Yeah.
were getting into bikes. And my brother Chuck, when he was probably about 18 or so, he bought a panhead, like a 51 panhead with a 10 over front end, and it was all in pieces.
Yeah.
And then he built it in the backyard, and then you know he moved from place to place building the bike, and that I mean that left an impression, obviously. And then I do remember like specifically, sort of like, wow, that is so fucking cool and neat.
Yeah.
Was he had it all together, but it wasn't running. And he had wheeled it out on the front street. And his friends were like pushing him. They were just playing, like pushing him,
Yeah.
feeling it like, oh yeah, you know, like they were so excited.
Yeah.
And it didn't even run. It hadn't had
Yeah.
it wired or anything. And I was just a little kid on the sidewalk going, man, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. You know, that is so
Yeah, man.
cool from nothing to this.
Yeah.
Uh, and I remember I actually I did a little pencil drawing of my brother on that chopper,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's cool.
and gave it to him. So that planted the seed, you know, for sure. And and then, you know, because they were into that, there was Easy Riders magazines around, like the early Easy Riders 70s, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was enamored with those. First I'd look at the boobs, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
of course, as a young boy, you know. And then but the Dave Mann stuff, all the Dave Mann illustrations, you know,
Yeah.
uh, and being a kid that was driven toward the arts, the visual arts, you know, seeing the Dave Mann paintings and the motorcycles that he would paint, that, you know, sort of reinforced all of that stuff. And that's the thing I think a lot of people, and we don't have to go on a tangent here, but that's what I think a lot of people sometimes miss about the Dave Mann stuff is if you really look at his work,
Yeah.
there's all these themes and all this stuff going on, but if it's all about the motorcycles,
Yeah.
the detail that he puts in the motorcycles is insane.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
insane. The proportions are accurate. Every little mechanism and bolt is accurate.
Yeah.
That compared to his figures, they're two different worlds. The figures could be
Totally.
like from another artist,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Totally.
these two genres of painting coexisting, very fascinating. But definitely Dave Mann planted a seed, and um, you know,
I remember reading something recently on the Fugal Files, and he was saying that Dave Mann, you know, he was, I want to word it right, but he was either painting bikes that Tom and everybody had made, or he'd painted them, and then guys were
made them.
making, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is cool as fuck.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
if you look at this bike, I mean, this bike is very much Dave Mann inspired. You know,
yeah,
the way it sits, the style, you
yeah,
know, even to some degree the paint. Uh, One of my favorite paintings of Dave Mann is I don't know the name of it, but it's like on the boulevard, and there's like two bikes. You know, like it's a low flung kind of shot. There's a station wagon with a family in the station wagon. There's a little kid in the back sticking his tongue out. and the two guys are on
I've
the
seen that
bike.
one. Shit.
It's a great
Yeah.
painting,
I find it.
fully tatted and the whole
Yeah.
deal. But
Yeah.
that bike, could come right out of that painting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, and then I was very lucky later in life to meet Dave Mann briefly, met his wife, and
Amazing.
so yeah, pretty neat. Yeah, pretty neat. Dave Mann is Ventura guy. I mean,
Yeah.
this is where I live. So yeah, so that definitely planted a seed, and um, but I really wasn't able to really dig my teeth into a lot of that stuff until much later in life because um, I just I come from a very meager existence, so to speak. I was always working, and
Yeah.
uh, so the idea of having uh, an expensive hobby or some expendable income to do something like this was, that just was not,
Yeah.
in the cards, so to speak. So, but once, I got to a place in my life where I had a couple dollars and I could sort of collect parts. I said, again, my brothers were encouraging me. I'm like, I want to, I buy a bike or something like that. And my brother Buck would always say, you got to fucking build a bike, man, build a bike. And I said, I just want to ride, man. I just want to ride. Well, fucking build one, So, so Chuck was really the guy that did it early on, and Buck was definitely sort of the instigator, like pushing my buttons, to
Yeah.
do it. And I collected a bunch of parts, and I finally sort of bit the bullet. And I remember the first bike I built from scratch, I built literally in this converted garage apartment. I had a Murphy bed, and I think everybody has these kind of stories.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a Murphy bed and a little coffee table and a couch and a TV. It literally was a one car garage converted into an apartment.
Right.
And I'd come home at night and I would put the Murphy bed up, and I had the frame and stuff of the bike on a furniture dolly, and I'd roll it into the middle of the room and I'd work on it.
That's cool as
And I
fuck.
remember, yeah, I'd get it.
It's
And
like
when I
something out
remember,
of a movie. Yeah,
oh,
that's
dude,
cool as
it
fuck.
was again stupid. Just what the fuck.
Yeah.
There's a will or there's a way. And I remember getting the bike done and pushing it out of the little apartment.
Yeah.
And the lady I was renting the place from, she lived up front, and she she was like, I wondered what you were doing in there. So
What bike was it?
it was this stroker shovel, like,
Cool.
had like scallops on it and all this stuff.
That's sick.
Yeah, it was a neat bike, and it had hauled ass. It was just a beast. But again,
Right.
lessons, you learn a lot,
Yeah.
just by doing. You make mistakes. I've always kind of been that kind of person. Like, I don't really mind making mistakes. It's how you learn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
So,
that's kind of where it started.
so how did you get into like fabrication and everything?
Just just doing it,
Yeah,
just
cool.
like wanting, you start off with a hacksaw, right? And you're like,
Yep.
okay, this it works, but this takes me forever. Then you get a freaking cutoff wheel, and right, and you just sort of organically, you know, uh, try different things.
Yeah.
And I think it's more of, for me, it's always been like utilitarian. Like, I need to do this, I want to do this, I'm going to try to figure out how to do it, and then I would deconstruct it, or like a motor, right? Just take it apart
Yep.
and then looking at it and figuring out how things work and move, and then rebuilding it. And that's really most of how I've learned. And
Yeah.
um again, my abilities fabricating, painting, or anything that I do are just, you know just by doing. I'm sure as hell I'm not a phenomenal fabricator. I'm an okay fabricator. I can figure it out, I can make it work.
Yeah.
And then, but the beauty of that is, you do it and you're like, okay, that's okay, but I can do better. And you try a different way or a different method, or you pick up some tips from somebody, like Cole or from Brandon or whoever. So yeah, I just, that's how I've learned everything, just by doing it,
I think
fucking it up.
it's really, yeah, that's really good for people to hear, because so many people hold back because they think,
Yeah.
oh, well, I don't know how to weld, so I just won't build those bars that I've got in my head. And it's like,
Yeah.
Fucking
You just got to jump
just gotta
in.
do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Got to jump in. And, I think maybe thank my dad for that. My dad was kind of the sink or swim kind of dude,
Hmm.
literally. I mean, push you in the water,
Yeah.
you get traumatized, you get
Yeah.
fucked up emotionally, but you learn how to swim.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dad was that kind of dude, he was just like, just do it, figure it out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's a measure of overcoming some fears about that stuff. And it's the same thing with like you doing the podcast or putting
Hmm.
yourself out there, or anybody putting themselves out there creatively, artistically, or whatever.
Yeah.
Overcoming that fear and just kind of jumping in the waters and not being afraid to make a mistake. And you make a
Yeah.
mistake, you learn from it. It's called growth, right?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
You're a professor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know or expect
Yeah.
that.
No, no, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the Crow Customs thing has always been a side hustle for years.
Cool.
And, for many, many years, I had a career working in the movie industry. I did visual effects and animation,
Oh wow.
like computer graphics, that kind of stuff.
So that's why you're good. You could draw Uncle Sam so fucking well and stuff. Is
Oh, thank you.
that right? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about that, but yeah. So I did that for years, and that's a very, it's project based kind of industry, where you work on a project for 5 6 months and then you don't, and I was lucky enough to be involved in that business for uh, in the heyday at a good time where there was lots of work, and
Cool.
and I did well for myself. So when I started getting more into bikes, I'd work on a project or two, and then I'd take some months off, work on a bike, sell the bike, do another bike. So I was kind of doing that,
Cool.
quite a bit. And then before my daughter was born, I made a conscious decision to try to build a life for myself where um, I could have as much time with my daughter as possible, especially at those early stages of their life.
Yep.
Um, and working in the film industry, that's very difficult. They're 14, 15-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week, 7 days a week. And I sure as hell didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so I started doing more bike stuff as much as I could. And then I would do, a freelance gig here or there. And
Hmm.
then part of doing freelance gigs, I would teach. I've always been teaching off and on.
Cool.
Yeah. And then one of the teaching gigs was at Cal State Northridge, which is over the hill here. And, a faculty position came up, and they mentioned to me I should submit for it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I never really thought about it in the
Yeah.
sense of like, I just figured I'd be working for the rest of my life
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
until I drop dead. And,
Yeah.
or even the idea of having like a straight gig
Yeah.
where I have a boss, I'm like, I fuck that. I don't want to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I do what you got
Totally.
to do to feed your kids, but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And,
Totally.
um, so I submitted, and it wasn't a slam dunk. I mean, I had to, it's a whole committee thing, and
Yeah.
they put you through the gauntlet, so to speak. And fortunately, yeah, I got the gig. So I've
So what
been
is it you
teaching.
teach?
I teach animation and visual
Right.
effects
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Cool.
graphics. Yeah, computer
Amazing.
graphics. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
wild.
Cool.
I love
Yeah.
it, dude. I love it. I love it.
Good.
I'm very, very grateful, very lucky. And you know, it's I make an okay living.
Yeah.
It's definitely not amazing, but it's okay, and it pays the bills, and I still have some time to doodle with the bikes and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And I don't really have a boss, and
Yeah.
other than the chair of the department and the
Yeah.
dean, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But it's nice, and I love the students. It's a great faculty. Just people are awesome, and great experience. And um, yeah, and so I've been teaching there for almost 8 years or so, like that. Yeah.
It must be rewarding.
Very.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is. I love it. I
yeah,
love it. And it's so different from production work. um, yeah, man, you develop relationships, and if you can feel like you're inspiring and changing a person's life, even if it's one or two, in
yeah,
a positive way, that's yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
100%.
totally. Yeah. So, any projects going on right now? Any future projects? Any after
Yeah,
this one behind you?
yeah. Well, this one's basically done, so that
Yeah.
that guy's going out the door pretty soon, and then I have this actually a generator, not a generator, but a nose cone shovel 75 that I've been building. That's been another project, but that's going to
Nice.
go on the list shortly.
Yeah.
That is, um, that's a pretty radical project. It's kind of somewhere in between Yang Yang and uh, a chopper. It's
Oh shit.
not
Cool.
exactly like this, and it's not exactly like Yang. It's
Yeah.
more, but it's definitely got a sporty vibe. It's a slammed front end. I'm
Cool.
lowering the neck. I'm doing all that kind of stuff. So that's one that's coming right up that I'm going to finish that. And then I have a 1950 basket panhead project for myself,
Cool.
um, that I'm building, and I keep waffling back and forth from building another chopper to building something like this for myself. But um, and then I have my part. I work on my parts. I'm doing a bunch of part stuff
Yeah.
for my little clamp and all that kind of thing.
Crow's
Making some,
nest.
yeah, and I'm making
Yeah.
some wax castings for the riser,
Awesome.
that kind of stuff. And I have, so yeah, I'm keep plugging away at that kind of stuff.
Didn't I see something about a big twin Evo? You were thinking,
Oh, I was
did I
joking
see
about
something?
that. It's like
Okay,
just,
right,
yeah. Somebody asked me like if I was going to build another bike for a show, like an invited show, what
right.
would it be? I said immediately like a Evo, build a big twin
Yeah.
Evo
Running
because
away from the yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
running away from the everybody's knucklehead, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
totally.
because not a lot of people are building them. I mean, there are
Yeah.
people building them, and there's some really cool ones, but not a lot of people are building them. And I always kind of wanted to do that anyway. I always kind of like that's something I haven't really done
Mm.
is to build like a real sort of proper, tough, kind of
Yeah.
down and dirty Evo chop with disc brakes and
Yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of angry and throaty and loud and
Yeah.
fast. I've never really built anything like that. So
Those
maybe one
things
day.
fucking eat miles.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
And just, and the Evo motors are phenomenal
Yeah. Yeah.
I built a couple of bikes with Evo motors over the years, and yeah, they're great motors. Maybe in 15, 20 years are going to be, as much as a knuckle. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the way things are going now with the fucking parts prices and stuff,
It's
I wouldn't be
insane.
fucking surprised. Yeah, yeah. It's
Dude,
crazy.
those fucking tanks right here.
Yeah.
I bought those a long time ago with a pile of parts. And I think I paid maybe $600 for those tanks, and which was expensive at the time.
They're
Um,
double now.
Triple. It's like
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
stupid. And you can't even find them like
Yeah.
that.
No.
It's out of hand. It's getting out
Yeah.
of hand. But
Yeah.
uh, that's why it's getting harder and harder to cut that stuff up. I
Yeah.
like back in the day, I'd be like, oh, whatever. I narrowed some tanks and the fender and I don't
Yeah.
care. But now it's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's
You're
hard to do.
devaluing it. It's yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to do it.
What about that bike that Duddy's replicating? Dustin
Who's
Porter.
that?
Dustin Porter, Shovel Pan 69.
Oh yeah. Oh, the pink thing, the pink bike he was talking
Yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Cool.
Um, yeah, that pink bike.
Yeah,
Okay, so um at the time, that bike, somebody brought that bike to Chopperfest over here. And then there was all this hup to do about it being a Denver's bike. And then people were saying, no, it's not a Denver's bike. But it is a Denver's bike. There's all this like bullshit going on. I
yeah,
don't care. Number
Yeah.
one, no offense to anybody that loves Honda 750s. I just never been a Honda 7. I've
Yeah.
never been a Honda guy, whatever.
Yeah.
Or Honda choppers, just not my thing.
Yeah.
Just like no offense to the British and Triumphs. I just never
Yeah.
been.
Totally. No, I'm with you. I totally get it. I don't. Yeah. Yeah.
I've worked on quite a few, but I not,
Yeah.
anyway, so then there was all this internet bullshit about the bike and blah blah blah. And then there was this guy back in Florida that owned a couple of bikes, and he called me periodically, and I rebuilt a motor on one of his bikes, and hey, I'm getting this bike, pick it up for me, and that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And he calls me, goes, hey man, this guy's delivering this bike, and I want him to deliver to your house, get it running, blah blah blah. I said, okay, cool. And then it was that bike. So this kid pulls up in a trailer with this pink monstrosity and an extra motor. So it was two motors. The motor in it wasn't the original, but he had
Right.
the original motor. And so the guy that he bought the bike off of actually was one of the original editors of this magazine out here called Cycle World. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No. No.
I want to say his name is David Nichols,
Okay.
was an editor for Cycle World. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, please. But Dave called me and gave me the whole backstory on the bike. He goes, yeah. He goes, he was neighbors. Dave was neighbors with, and I don't remember the cat's name. Somebody can correct me. Was the original painter for Denver's back in the
Right.
day. Like, so
Right.
this guy painted all of Denver's bikes. And so the bike, that particular bike, wasn't quote unquote a bike that was built in Denver shop,
Yeah.
but it had Denver parts on it.
Right.
Right. So some of the parts were Denver parts, and it was painted by the original Denver's painter guy. So
Right.
that's the story of that bike. The other funny part of it is um, we cleaned it all the carb out and all this stuff. We got the bike running, got it all dialed in and all that stuff. And I rode it up and down the street. I'm like, fuck this. It was like, dude, the only way you could ride that bike and have any stability is if you're doing like 40 miles an hour.
Shit,
Anything
really?
under 40 miles an hour, you're like,
Is that because of the rear end with
the
that
whole,
weird suspension thing, or is that not?
yeah, it was the whole front end. The gooseneck thing was so
Right. Okay.
crazy in the front.
Yeah.
It was like a dragster, and the
Yeah.
whole front end would bounce, and it was, you
Shit.
know, it was super sketchy, man, super sketchy.
Right.
And but it sat in my shop there in Culver City for the longest time. I had it
Yeah.
for several years, and then I bought a house and was moving, and I called the guy, and I can't get in touch with the guy. Like, I don't know where the guy is. He
Yeah.
disappeared. I don't know what the fuck is going on. And then I emailed him, and I think I got an email response from him. I said, listen, I can't carry these bikes with me.
Yeah.
I'm going to take them over to, uh, remember early on in the episode, I was talking about Yoshi, this guy,
Yep.
Yoshi,
Yep.
garage company. Well, they had moved, and I still knew
Right.
Yoshi, and they had this big, huge facility in Inglewood.
Cool.
And I said, hey, I'll take it to Yoshi, and he can just store it at Yoshi's place. He's like, yeah, no problem. And so I think it's still there.
What?
Yeah, I think it's still there.
Crazy.
Yeah, because I went in like, this is a long time ago, dude. So I went in, fuck, 5 or 6 years later after that, and the bike was still there.
Holy
So,
shit.
so if he wants to buy that bike,
Dustin will be straight onto
yeah,
that.
so tell him to get
That's
in touch with
crazy.
Yoshi at Garage Company. He probably knows the
Fuck.
whole. Yeah,
That's crazy. Shit.
yeah,
He'll be happy I've asked about that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
call Yoshi at Garage Company. But I will tell you, Yoshi's going to charge you a premium.
Right. Okay. Cool, man.
Right on, bro.
Man, thank you so much for coming on. Honest to God, I really, really do appreciate it. Like I said
Well,
at the start, it's crazy talking to you after, like if it wasn't for you, that fucking program, I wouldn't. Might not even be into fucking choppers. So,
oh man, well
man, seriously, I
that's
appreciate you a lot.
it's easy to, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. It's always very humbling, because I think when you're doing things like that, any of this stuff, and sometimes you lose sight of, you know, it is, it's always very humbling, because I think when you're doing things like that, any of this stuff, and sometimes you lose sight of, of, you know, it is, it's always very humbling, because I think when you're doing things like that, any of this stuff, and sometimes you lose sight of, of, you know, it is, it's always very humbling, because I think when you're doing things like that, any of this stuff, and sometimes you lose sight of how that may affect other people, and
Yeah.
the fact that that affects other people in a positive way and they get some love and joy out of their life,
Yeah, man.
that means the world to me, man. So thank you.
When I'm working on a part or whatever, and I'm about to quit, no word of a lie, I think about that air cleaner, and I'm like, honest to God, I do. Like not like consciously, like oh, think but it pops in my head, and I'm like, no, finish the fucking thing. You know what I mean? And I don't know why. It's just stuck with me. So
Well, I'm very flattered that I had
I
that impression.
appreciate it. Really.
All right, my man. It's a real pleasure to meet you, Oliver.
You too, man. Honestly, and we'll keep in touch. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm definitely getting out there this year. I'm hoping to get to Born Free. So is that far from you?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
down south. It's a good 2.5 hours or so
Okay.
south. But yeah, man. I mean, reach out to me. You got a
Yeah,
place to crash if you need it. You need to
I
put a bike
appreciate that.
or something. You're more than welcome. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I'll leave you to get on with your day.
thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much, buddy. See ya.
All right, bye bye.